Brand new podcast, everybody. Late Calls, episode number 2. And I've got a couple stories here about bullying and when cops transport to the hospital our trauma victims. Let's just get right into it. Number 1, this episode or this article here: nurse speaks out against colleagues who bully EMS workers. And this showed up in nursing.org or nurse.org and online content, and by Cameron Hershey. If you guys don't know who that is, he's got a really decent social media presence. He's at TraumaCam on Instagram. And here it goes. It says, lately we've seen all the viral sensations to stomp out nursing bullying. While the cause is noble, nurse bullying is not just isolated within the profession. In fact, I can argue some of the worst cases of bullying I've seen in healthcare is initiated by nurses towards those in other patient care positions. So he's talking about age-old rivalry of the ICU versus the ED, and that's great. It says, one relationship I've watched many nurses work little to cultivate. I witness a large lack of understanding and growing disrespect daily. And it's nurses versus EMS, including medics, paramedics, and other pre-hospital personnel. I get it. I think it's gone on for years. And it says, now, I admit there's a large number of nurses that do respect our pre-hospital brothers and sisters, and in my opinion, there's also a growing number of those who don't. And he is also a critical care transport RN, so he's got the pre-hospital point of view as well, or at least the inter-facility point of view. It says, I'm not only witnessing this treatment, he's actually experiencing it. And it kind of goes into saying, there's kind of an unwritten hierarchy in healthcare, and it's a presumption that those who in pre-hospital care are somehow beneath those that work in the hospital. I would tend to agree with that, but I don't know that I've ever taken that as I'm being bullied, or that people think I'm beneath them. Again, paramedic, it's medical terminology, extreme ends of, and we when we lecture, the hospital is a nice, comfortable, climate-controlled, well-lit area, where everything is at your fingertips, versus the ambulance, where it's the back of the truck, the van, the whatever, and you've only got what you've got. You've got your bag, you've got your equipment on the wall, and that's it. And then pre-hospital, we work in an austere environment, and I think a lot of pre-hospital clinicians wear that like a badge, which is awesome. You should. You absolutely should. You put in the time, you put in the continuing ed, you can work in those less than favorable conditions. So when you are in those favorable conditions, man, you put your feet up and you're like, oh, this just flows, no problem. It says, I cannot count the times I have watched a nurse treat an EMS crew with disrespect. He says he understands the nurses are overworked, understaffed. Well, we've heard that story before on the EMS side. This really isn't an argument of, who's got it better, EMS or nursing. And then it says, on the other hand, if you've ever imagined completing your work in the back of a 5x8 box barreling down a bumpy highway with limited time, it is what it is. That's our job. It is what it is. And it goes on, talks a couple instances where he's seen it. I've watched nurses scoff at EMS crews for failing to start an IV. They've criticized the dressing or even allow the patient to urinate on themselves. I've had that exchange thousands of times. Oh, you didn't put a line in? I'm like, yeah, just you didn't need it. Okay, no big deal. I'm having maybe a little bit of a more rougher day. You're like, yeah, I don't work for you. I don't work for the hospital. And again, I've never said that maliciously. It's always been like, yeah, I guess you'll have to do some work today. It's not like, wow, I got to get 2 lines in or the nurse will be mad at me. It's never been that, ever, not ever. I've watched nurse practitioners and triage nurses grill paramedics as if they were hiding some bit of information or were purposely avoiding a treatment. I can't think of a time where that's happened at all. Maybe I'm just lucky. I don't know. To me, the advent of electronic bedside PCRs has really, changed the attention span of the RN. There's plenty of times where you used to come in, give a great report. You'd have the nurse's attention, and now it's like, what's her social? And they look them up, and you're trying to be like, yeah, a 65-year-old female, Miss Jenkins, and she started having chest pain about 3 hours ago, worsening over time. She took 3-nitro with no relief, and they're like, do you still take this daily med? And you're like, you're not listening. Again, I don't feel bullied. I feel disrespected. Mostly because if you just want to hear my 1-minute handoff, and then you can go and check your boxes and ask them if they feel safe at home. Is anyone harming them? You have things to do. I have things to do. We need to remember that. And that computer is not your life. No matter what your administration told you, that patient, you need to have the interaction with your patient. If you're just there to check boxes, go home. That's another problem in healthcare. What else here? Listen to staff groan and moan about the cleanliness of their patients, the lack of knowledge an EMS crew has, or even the miscalculation of an ETA. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. Now, jokingly, I might be like, yeah, we're 10 minutes out, and 2 minutes later, we're pulling into the room, and they're like, I thought you were 10 minutes out. I'm like, well, we weren't. My bad. I look at the world through a 2x2 piece of plexiglass, moving backwards in the ambulance, and I'm not really good at calculating time that way. And again, in my world, I still feel that you're lucky I even called to pre-notify you that I was there. Again, it's a courtesy. It's a courtesy. And again, I'm not saying I'm trying to screw you over. Like, tonight, let's give the ETA wrong for every inbound patient. It's not, not doing it on purpose. And again, I understand it's a symptom of being overworked and understaffed. So it says we're all in this together. Support and inclusivity across healthcare teams. Great. He has a kind of a solution to some of it to kind of start helping us, get along with each other, or at least have an idea of what the other is going through. All ER, ICU, and critical care nurses should be required to participate in at least 24 hours worth of clinicals with both ALS and BLS pre-hospital crews to perhaps give us a better understanding of what they have to deal with daily. That's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. Because, Mr. Murphy would have it, you damn well know that those nurses are going to ride with you on a no-hitter day where you're posted in a parking lot or your station, and you're pretty much your entire job is holding down a recliner or deciding which delicious roller dog is going to make me the least sick at the gas station. Education is probably going to get you a little bit further, or have the medics come in to talk to you during your nursing class or your con ed. And I'm not saying I don't want you there. We've had nurses ride with us. We have intern-extern programs, and it's no big deal. I don't think they walk away going, oh my God, the next 25 years, I'm going to absolutely be nicer to these people. And if that's what you're trying to do, I don't see the benefit there at all. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't see the benefit of it, because it's a one-time thing when you have usually no experience in nursing school, and you're still trying to figure out, what you're there for. So the hospital staff, doctors, unit nurses, CNAs, and everybody understand these crews have fewer resources, less time, less support than we could ever think of, blah, blah, blah. But they maintain cordial even when you're not. Yeah, we just wait to vent till we're in the ambulance. Or sometimes it got bad enough where you have it out in the ED. There's times you push the wrong button and, here we are. And again, it's a time to respect our EMS crews. So there, respect is the operative word, and stop the bullying. I don't believe lack of respect and bullying are the same thing. I think people are using the word interchangeably, and it comes back to playing the old, well, you got to have thick skin in this game. And now I guess there's a change that just saying that term is a is a red flag to bullying. If you say, well, you got to have thick skin in the EMS game. That's like saying, well, all of a sudden you have to be prepared to be bullied. I don't know that it's bullying. I believe it's lack of respect or lack of knowledge, because it's coming from inside the hospital versus outside the hospital from our patient. I just don't, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding what it really is. Like it says, we're all working toward the same goal, and we're all in it together, and that's fine. I agree with that 100%. You guys can check out Cameron Hershey's stuff on Instagram, TraumaCam, at TraumaCam, TraumaCam, on Instagram, and he's out there. He's got some really good content, and it's nothing against him. I think it's pretty good, opinion piece. But again, personally, my opinion is I just don't, I'm not really saying, I think there's a difference between bullying and lack of respect. And the bullying thing, man, it hit social media pretty hard this week. There was another, I think that article here that was written on November 16th, and it was weird because it was after I found the next article, which was from EMS 1. It was called "Enough is Enough: 5 Ways to End Bullying and Fire in EMS." So all of a sudden, I guess bullying and fire in EMS is a big deal. And oddly enough, we had a employee wellness survey that went out at our service about a month ago, and the results got published, and it did pretty well. I think it had about 112, 115 people respond. And there was a question that said, have you been bullied in the last several months or whatever it was? And 24 people at our service said yes. And now it doesn't say did the bullying come internally or externally, but evidently this is the thing. Like, I just never, maybe I'm getting old in EMS. I just don't see this. There's even parts in here that says, well, it's part of the job. I guess, again, disrespect is part of the job. There's always going to be people that don't like you. But, I had to go look up the definition. Like, I had to go look and find out what bullying really is. I just thought it was one of those, well, the third graders do it. Evidently, no. Adult bullying is a big deal, and healthcare bullying has been going on for years. The Joint Commission has several position papers on it for nurses, doctors, and hospital staff. So this one is Enough is Enough: 5 Ways to End Bullying in EMS. And again, you're going to see some similarities here to the last article. So this came from Page, Wolfberg, and Worth. EMS legal stuff. And it says we need to do more to improve the care and compassion we show to our fire and EMS brethren. So, great. Plenty about harassment and discrimination, much less being said of the problems with bullying and fire and EMS. This woman, she was recently at an EMS conference. She heard the speaker give a very poignant discussion on suicide at EMS. He discussed 6 different people from around the country who had all committed suicide as a result of their participating in fire and EMS activities. Okay. Public safety suicide, big deal, absolutely. And she goes on to say, when she's visited clients, she's heard comments as "suck it up, buttercup, it's a fire company. We expect people to have thick skin. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the firehouse." I've heard people jokingly call each other derogatory and offensive names, which were presumably intended to be in jest. I've also heard people getting screamed and cursed at for not completing assignments. I could definitely go on with other examples, but I think you get the point. Okay. To me, I think, again, this is my opinion, I've heard every single one of those in the last 25 years in EMS. I don't specifically know that where this is bullying. Again, I believe it's perception. But when you look at the definition of bullying, using a position of higher power or perceived power inequality to, get something from the person who doesn't have that power. That's, or like the threat of, or the perceived threat of harm or whatever, that's what we're talking about. So she says these kinds of comments and behaviors have no business in the fire and EMS workplaces. These comments and behaviors are each examples of bullying in action and need to stop. And it says a lot of it is very, very emotional, and being emotional about some calls does not make anyone a bad EMS provider or firefighter. Rather, it makes them human. So here is where I have the problem with this article. So we've made a transition from the bullying end of this, or disparaging comments, into, I told someone suck it up after a perceived bad call, and now that person, because of that comment, goes and kills themselves. Well, now it's an absolute legal issue if it comes back that somebody said suck it up. That's not where, we need to go. Okay? This should be nice to people and don't bully because you should be a good person, not because we need to cover your ass if down the road someone remembers me saying to somebody, dude, suck it up. People die, and they're going to come in, somebody kills himself, and they're like, I remember that time Chris told that guy, suck it up, people kill them, people die all the time. And then all of a sudden I'm the asshole because I bullied, and no, it was because I made a shitty comment because I'm a bad person, and was like, oh, well, I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know what to say, and maybe I'm not really good with my words. So she outlines five measures to get rid of bullying or do whatever. It says show care and compassion for your coworkers. Never suggest that your colleagues should suck it up and get a thicker skin. Refer them out to an employee assistance program. Encourage the coworker to use it. Again, this is in context to difficult calls or perceived bad calls. Never make fun of your coworkers for any reason. I don't even know why you wrote that. I mean, there's not one of you listening who's never goofed off with your partner. Not ever. It's called human nature. You're not going to get away from it. Now, there's absolutely levels from it, and their example is, again, one extreme of it. It's never okay to make fun of your coworkers. What you think is a harmless joke may not be so harmless to the person hearing it. For example, a bigger person knows that he or she is big, and that person may laugh when you joke about their size, but many people just internalize comments, put on a brave face, and no one enjoys being made fun of, regardless of how well they may seem to outwardly take it. I get it, okay? Within the last week, the EMS-capades comic came out. And it was Thanksgiving related, and they're sitting on the recliners they just ate and whatever. And the one dude's talking to his partner. He's like, "Man, I'm thinking about all the great things about Thanksgiving, things I'm thankful for." And he's like, "Thankful for this and that." And he goes, "Man," he's like, "thankful for a good partner." And then he looks at his partner and he goes, "Yeah, maybe I'll get one soon." Okay. Guess what? Bullying. You just made fun of him. That guy thinks, "Oh my God, I'm a bad partner. I'm gonna go home and kill myself." Okay. Total bullshit. That's called banter. Okay, it's called being human. So I'm allowed to have human emotions, but when I want to goof off with my partner, now I'm a bully. Stupid. Okay, stupid that it's perceived like that now. Did he use a position of higher power to extort something from the guy with lower power? No, it's just a comment. Okay, if you're that maladjusted that you cannot take that comment for what it is, I don't know what job you're good at. I don't know what job you're well suited for. It's probably not EMS. Do you complain when the patient talks shit to you? You know how many times I've looked at a patient and been like, been called worse by better. Okay? I don't know. I don't know where half of this stuff comes from. What's happened to us as people. If you're a supervisor, avoid yelling or raising your voice when disciplining. Solid advice, it's pretty tempting to yell at people. I like when it says, especially when they continue to repeat bad behavior after you've already counseled them. What do you mean, repeat bad behavior? What's wrong with you? It's called progressive discipline. Verbal, written, second written, final written, bye. Go find another job. It's probably 2 writtens too many, if you ask me. Am I a hard ass? No. Again, the punishment needs to fit the crime. So, whatever. If you witness someone getting bullied, get involved. That's fine. If you see somebody, there's levels. And again, now if someone is kind of you watch a training officer mentor one of their trainees, they fucked up on a call and they're being told, rather you not repeat that behavior. Don't let it happen again. You don't need to walk over there and be like, hey, being kind of hard on that guy. He just gave sucks and forgot to ventilate the patient for 5 minutes. You're like, oh, well, I'm just going to go back over here. Carry on. There's times where, because of the severity of something, you might need a little stern talking to and a little bit more of a louder voice. Okay? I don't perceive that as bullying. Okay? Is the training officer in a position of higher authority? Yep. Experience, stature, yes. That's just the way of the world. Okay, that's the way of the world. Now, when you continue it, obviously, or, you always bring that up, you're like, hey, remember that time you killed that guy? Blah, blah, blah. You can't, there's a limit, and you should know that. Okay, you should know that. Don't gossip. Again, not really sure why you wrote that. It's a good suggestion. And even the first sentence says, we are all guilty of gossiping to a certain degree. Now, great. But if you're spreading rumors and stories that you think can be hurtful, and you're trying to destroy their life, yes, that's bullying. Absolutely. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. Do people do it? Absolutely. Further, a lot of times these rumors are not even true. Even if you know the rumor's true, it's still best to keep the information to yourself. Some people are good at that. Some people aren't. So now, again, it's back here. Just like EMS providers and firefighters, we must show care and compassion to patients and to the people we serve. We must show to a similar degree the care and compassion to our coworkers. Okay, again, no question. That doesn't mean you can't joke with them. That doesn't mean that every joke you say is bullying. You can use every cliche you can think of. Perception is reality until changed. That's fine. Have the fortitude to talk it out, talk to your partner and be like, dude, that's not cool. Be like, oh, sorry, and learn from that. There's sometimes there's jokes that work and jokes that don't. Okay. Humor that works, humor that doesn't. I'm not telling you there's a cookie cutter template to be a good person. There's just shitty people out there. And I think being able to recognize, real bullying is probably a decent skill to have. Again, in my day coming up, it was just busting balls. I don't think I've ever felt bullied by anybody. But now looking at some of these definitions and some of these examples, I'm like, oh, I think I bullied a lot of people and didn't even know it. So it's just something to think about. But again, I think the article kind of looked at it more from that legal aspect of, I might have to come in here and defend somebody, and I don't want to go down that road and say, well, if you don't do these 5 things, it'll be a lot easier to make a case for you. So again, back to those definitions. What is bullying itself? An imbalance of power. And I got this from stopbullying.gov, and it's more geared toward children, school children, but it says, kids who bully use their power, such as physical strength, access to embarrassing information, or popularity to control or harm others. Power imbalances can change over time and in different situations, even if they involve the same people. And then repetition. Bullying behaviors happen more than once or have the potential to happen more than once. Then that's it right there, the repetition. So, you make one off-color comment about, someone's patient care, like the cartoon cell. Maybe I'll get a good partner one day. If that guy's always like, yeah, you fucking suck, I wish I was working with so-and-so, and I can't believe you're still here. Repeated. That's bullying. You're the training officer. You're like, man, I can't wait till your probation's up. I don't think you're going to make it. That's not jokes anymore. That's not a joke anymore. So there's different types of bullying. You can have verbal bullying. So if you say or write mean things. So that's, again, now verbal bullying. At the government definition, teasing, name calling, inappropriate sexual comments. Never right in the workplace, obviously. Taunting, threatening to cause harm. Then you have social bullying, where That's referred to as relational bullying. It's hurting someone's reputation or relationships. So that's like leaving somebody out on purpose, telling other people not to be friends with this person, spreading rumors, embarrassing somebody in public. And then the typical, again, people, the old people getting old like me, who thinks it's just physical, where that's involves, on the playground, involves hurting a person's body or possessions. So that can be hitting, kicking, or punching, spitting on somebody, tripping or pushing, taking or breaking someone's things, making mean or rude hand gestures. Again, when you put your hands on somebody now and you're an adult, that's assault. It's battery. What's wrong with you? There's a lot of data. I mean, there's actually a separation between youth and adult bullying, but those, I thought those were decent definitions that, you can kind of use to kind of as a guide. It's a thing. I don't think it's going anywhere. Obviously, we need to reduce it. You need to keep an eye on yourself, your partners, and others to make sure they're not participating in it. You shouldn't have to go to work and deal with that. We have enough other bullshit to deal with, like bad weather, patients, difficult protocols, whatever it is. But again, you still need to mentor. You need to correct incorrect behaviors. You can't let that go either. You got to find that happy medium. And it comes down to just stop being a shitty person. Just be decent, man. Just treat everybody cool. Just treat everybody cool. All right. Enough about bullying. Let's talk about some trauma stuff. A little bit of trauma stuff here. And again, because this came up a couple different times in my social media, I said, ooh, you just made the podcast. So this one showed up in police1.com, but it was from a different report, from some kind of like a little independent site, I guess, from Slate. So it says, where cop cars double as ambulances. In Philadelphia, police often race shooting victims to the hospital rather than wait for paramedics. Experts in trauma and policing say more cities should consider it. So right off the bat, if you guys didn't know, I came from the suburbs of Philadelphia. I still live in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. It butts right up against Philadelphia. And I worked a third service, interfacility service, in the late 90s, right before, from 97 to 2000, right before I went to paramedic school. And I've seen this. I was well aware of it in the day, and it still goes on. It happened years before I even got into EMS, and this article talks about that. So it gives a story about this guy who was shot twice in the chest. He was leaving a party, whatever, and cops show up and they look at this guy and they throw him in the back of the cop car and they take him to the trauma center. Now I know that headline said about victims to the hospital. It's not the hospital; they take him to a trauma center. And then it's important to understand in this article that they're not just going anywhere; they're going to the trauma center. So and this guy lived. He made it to the trauma center. They worked on him. He lost a lot of blood. Now, again, important to understand, this man received zero care in the back of that cop car. In fact, I don't even think one of the cops sat with him. They both sat in the front, raced to the trauma center, and just dumped him off. Okay, and said, here, this guy's been shot. And then the surgeon, like I said, the surgeon later told him he'd made it to the hospital with less than a minute to spare. So hit a major artery in his chest, lost a lot of blood, and they saved him. So again, if you're listening and you've been in EMS for any period of time, or you're in basic school, whatever, you scoop and scoot, scoop and run versus stay and play. Okay, this guy got the scoop and scoot. So like it says, among cities with the highest rates of homicide, Philly is the only one where police routinely rush gunshot and stab victims to the nearest trauma center. And now it makes that delineation, and they don't wait for the ambulance. It's deeply entrenched among the city's law enforcement officers who focus their patrol in areas with the highest instances of violent crime, and as a result, frequently beat EMS to the scene. Great, okay, and that's pretty much a universal thing. Cops are there first, fire department usually second, and EMS is usually third. for plenty of different reasons, whether it's a resource reason or staging reasons, as far as dispatch protocols, response protocols, and configurations. So, like, there's a quote: "The sense has always been get that person to the hospital quick." And it's just something that you do, and they've been doing it for years with decent results. So it says last year, 1,223 shooting victims were delivered to the city trauma center in the back of a police car or a wagon. It's a lot of people who came in by cop car versus ambulance. So Temple University Hospital, Temple Trauma, great trauma center. One of the busiest hospitals for gunshot patients, so it's a borderline of coming into North Philadelphia there. A lot of trauma there. And there's about 70% of the victims there had penetrating trauma. They arrived by a police vehicle or a private vehicle or walk-in. I can remember pulling in. My last job before I went to paramedic school was critical care transport. I was an EMT on a critical care transport truck, and we were stationed at a small hospital, Episcopal Hospital, in North Philadelphia. Not a trauma center, and we would get a lot of people dumped off there, overdoses, and just, think of the smallest Band-Aid station you can think of that's receiving trauma all the time. And we would stabilize them in the ED and then drive down typically to Temple Trauma with a normal trauma alert in our facility, and then put them in the trauma bay and then let them do their thing. People would come up, the car would scream up, they'd dump some dude out. You're like, hey, what's this guy's name? They're like, I don't know. But they'd be like, help my friend. Well, where's he coming from? Under the bridge. Like, okay, drag him in there and patch him up and get a couple lines started, put him back in the ambulance, and then drive down to the trauma center. It's then while we did a transfer, where I was going with that story was one night we did a transfer, and as we dumped somebody off at Temple Trauma, we watched the little corner store across from the ambulance ramp get robbed, and the dude gets shot on the thing, and we walk across the street, pull him across the street into the trauma bay. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And you talk about walk in or arrive by some other way. I mean, it was just our little third service ambulance. We're like, hey, that guy just got shot. And, the dude ran, and we're like, all right, let's go get him, drag him across the street. And, we didn't even put him in the stretcher. We just picked him up and put him in the trauma bay. We're like, hey, we found this guy outside. So I absolutely get it. So the cops receive basic training on treating gunshot wounds, how to apply a tourniquet. Most victims they transport receive little or no medical care. Now, for EMS listening to this, you guys are really freaking out. I absolutely like, oh my God, put the trauma dressing on, quick clot. We got to put the tourniquets on, high and tight. They're not doing it. Okay, they're not doing it. You're lucky if they even get direct pressure, because half the time nobody sits in the back with this patient because they're laying on the seat. So, that's the essence of scoop and run. And there's the trauma docs are saying they believe it's saving lives. So now, special to Philadelphia, there are 8 trauma centers. There is literally a trauma center on every corner. And they're all busy. Every single one of them are busy. But just what do we know? What do we know in EMS? Trauma is a surgical disease. Get me to the surgeon. Bright lights, cold steel, all those adages you've heard coming up and used throughout the years. They're proving it. They're proving it in Philadelphia. But like I said, they are unique. The cops have taken ownership of it, and like I said, it's been going on for years, and it's accepted. So a lot of you probably think, these cops should stay in their lane. Let me do my job. And it's not meant to that. It's not meant to be that way. It's not a turnkey solution, for everybody. And, that should definitely be something to think about. The other thing here is that, we know we've kind of discounted the golden hour, like, oh, it was come up with, they thought it up on a napkin at a bar. We have so much better surgical techniques today. We've extended that out. We still have that platinum 10 minutes. We don't want to stay and play. And that's what they're trying to prove here. They're saying that it's working. Get these patients to a trauma center, get these patients to a surgeon, get these patients to blood. And it's going to improve outcomes. Now, to me, this guy, this guy, the shooting victim, he's like, man, they're my heroes. I'm eternally grateful for them. I think this is also another reason why simple trauma care, like TCCC and TECC, tourniquets and chest seals and hemostatic gauze is pretty crucial for everybody. I mean, again, we all want to do a ton of cool shit, cool ALS shit. Let's put bilateral IVs in. Let's drill this dude's arm. No, let's, stop the bleeding and get him to the hospital. That's where we need to focus on. But yeah, I mean, they're doing a good job. Long held tradition. Most of these guys can't imagine their jobs without it, and that's awesome. Last year the cops took 408 gunshot victims to Philadelphia trauma centers. Okay, 408 of them. That's a big deal. Presbyterian, actually, one of the other trauma centers in Philadelphia, they actually put a little drop off spot for the cop cars, not even for the ambulance, so the cop car can just drive up and get the dude out, get the patient out, and bring him right in. That's kind of cool. So back in '95, they kind of compared the mortality rates of assault victims transported by police versus medics, and they were finding there wasn't really a significant difference in survival. And then a year later, the Philadelphia police actually made it policy that they could drive gunshot and stabbing victims and not wait for EMS. I started in '92. I got my EMT in '96, and this was going on well before that. I started with a transfer service in '97, and I did the critical care in '99 to 2000 before I left for school. So, and we watched it every night, and it worked. I mean, it worked. What else? I mean, it really just kind of goes on to say, hey, it's a good idea. And, it's hard they were trying to say like, well, let's try this other places. It's kind of hard to catch on. And again, people look at the liability issues, or the other typical, well, why do I have paramedics? And again, we've seen it come up in studies in the past where advanced procedures like ET tubes and IV fluids, so they're helpful in some patients, but in trauma patients, they're probably, again, where time is of the essence. We're wasting time. We're keeping them from the surgeon. We're keeping them from blood. And then not to mention, you want to infuse normal saline and not blood, pasta water, that's just what's it doing, contributing to that trauma triad. You're making them cold, you're making them acidotic, and you're washing out clotting factors. So, not helping, you're not helping get them to the hospital. Like I said, everybody wants to do cool ALS shit. Let's get the tube in, let's drill their bones, let's do this, let's do that. If you're not stopping the bleeding and replacing those red cells, and fixing the internal damage. I mean, you got somebody shot in the belly. It's non-compressible hemorrhage. What are you doing by hanging out there? That IV is not stopping that hemorrhage. So you just got to accept it. There's plenty of other calls where we're going to do cool ALS shit. These patients need cool BLS shit. If you want to feel better about yourself, call it cool tactical shit and be like, yeah, I put a tourniquet on, or yeah, I did wound packing, or yeah, I had to do a crike, emergency airway. Yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. So they talked about, they have an understanding based on the medical evidence, the goal, the entire public safety enterprise to get the penetrating trauma patients to the nearest trauma center. And again, even the police department, they don't say hospital, they say trauma center. They're not just going to the closest neighborhood small hospital. They're going to a trauma center. And, there's some room for improvement. They said other police departments, they're letting their officers do it, including Chicago, Detroit, Stockton, California. They haven't really, those departments don't do it on a regular basis like Philly does. And there's some other stuff that goes along with that. Culture, the culture of the departments has a lot to do with it. So, this is one of those things that's kind of hard to catch on, and, you gotta have that access to that level 1 trauma center. I don't see this like doing it just to do it. You got to have that stuff in place. You've got to have, I think you need to have a little bit of training. I think me, personally, in a perfect world, I would be training my police officers in TCCC or TECC, treating those causes of preventable battlefield death. I'd have one guy drive, one guy would sit in the back, trying to put direct pressure, trying to make sure those tourniquets are tight, wound pack if needed, chest seal, and definitely notify the hospital some way or the other. Back in, again, old days in Philadelphia, they used to have the thing called the HASTE system, HASTE, hospital, let's see, what was it? Hospital alert system, tone encoded. And the thing was awesome because you could listen to it citywide. And, you would be on the medic truck, you'd hear the medic truck, and be like, Philly, medic 8, they'd be like, medic 8's en route to Hahnemann with a 25-year-old, trauma transport, multiple gunshot wounds, unstable vitals, ETA 10 minutes. And then the dispatcher would say, all units stand by while I haste the hospital. And then they would send out a tone. It would open up an intercom over the intercom at Hahnemann Trauma, and you'd hear that report again, and that would be, now we got pagers, and the trauma pager goes off, everything's internal, you don't need that anymore. But it was always cool to listen to. But they got a notification. So if the cops could notify, like, hey, I'm transporting one to Temple, guy's been shot, that's fine. They know a shooting's coming here by cop car. Don't expect the medics to roll in on a stretcher. But again, with a little extra training, do expect the medics to carry this, or the cops to carry this guy in with a tourniquet in place or a chest seal in place. I think that would be very beneficial. You're not taking extra time. You can do that stuff en route. You're moving them toward the surgeon. Beneficial for everybody. So it's gonna require a little bit of changing culture. It's not a turnkey solution. And you know what? I know what I said about Narcan and the cops in episode 1. It's very easy to say, stay in your lane, cops, do cop stuff. I don't do cop stuff when I get out there. But again, it's in context, it's in context. Stop the bleed is a very simple thing to train. Trauma is a surgical disease. Trauma is easy, stop the bleeding, go to the surgeon, versus learning the pathophysiology of respiratory or CNS depression and the use of opiates and the pharmacodynamics of Narcan. I think it's a little bit different there. I also think that EMS should be the ones who are teaching the cops these stop the bleed programs, kind of promote interagency training, get a little bit of better insight into what each agency does, or, how we can help each other. And again, I think it just kind of builds that relationship and, cuts down on the bullying. Not really, but it definitely, I think it would help. I think it's a great program, not just because it's Philadelphia, and I came from there, but, you've got to have those things in place. Like it says, Philadelphia has 5 adult level 1 trauma centers, all within close proximity, where they were trying to think about doing this in Cleveland. They have just 2, and they're on the opposite sides of town. There's a time and a place for this. It's not a turnkey solution, but if you have the means, it's something to look into. I think it's going to be good for a lot of people, especially people who've been shot or stabbed. The other part of this, though, you have cops driving crazy through the city, but they're good at it because they do it every day. The article also talks about some of the legalities of it, that, they worried that they'd be sued. Some places are worried they'd be sued for not giving good pre-hospital care. And there were 2 issues in Philadelphia where family members were like, hey, if they would have had an ambulance, they might not have died. And I think they were both settled out of court. But, it's just something to think about. And I thought it was a good article. It popped up a couple times. It garnered some discussion. And every discussion on the different boards, whether it was a tactical medicine page, EMS page, cop page, it was all the same thing. It was like, well, stay in your lane. And I think versus some people like, I think it's a good idea. And then there were plenty of cops who were like, yeah, I've done this 100 times. Not all Philadelphia cops and not all the trauma centers. But again, it's, move toward definitive care. There's no reason to watch somebody lay there and bleed. some simple training, some simple equipment. I think we should definitely be pushing for trauma kits, like real trauma kits, in every cop car along with the training. We've had plenty of cops put tourniquets on. We had a cop maybe 2 years ago now in the summer. He did. I don't think he knew he did it, or maybe he did. He wound packed a stab wound, a severe stab wound, and I'm pretty sure saved this kid's life. I'm pretty sure that he saved this kid's life. I looked at our tourniquets at our service. Most of them are applied by cops, not by EMS. Because again, it was done before we get there, because they're typically there first. Like I said, police first and then fire and then us. We're usually, unless it happened right in front of us or we were first, we're just rechecking them, making sure they're tight and the bleeding stops. So a couple things to think about, and as always, I appreciate you guys listening, and we're on YouTube now. I've seen some of the videos get some views there, some subscribers. So stop by, subscribe. You guys can check out the link at the bottom of the show notes here. If you guys head over there, subscribe. And right now it's just video versions of the podcast itself, and pretty soon there's going to be some different presentations on there. Kind of like mini Con Ed type things. What else? Instagram, Facebook, we're everywhere, Twitter. So if you guys want to go find us, just search Medic Up Podcast in your browser and it'll find us somewhere, and you click like, subscribe, you tell your friends. I keep making content. We talk. Things are cool. You learn, I learn, and we get better out there. So guys, thanks for listening. And we'll see you all next week.